The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
This is your host, Gerard, with episode number 2 of Florida's Fresh Mix on the Florida Podcast Network, an eclectic mix of Florida's freshest personalities. This episode is brought to you by our amazing launch sponsor, Mainline Marketing. Listen in.
Hello, this is Amber, the production assistant for the Florida Podcast Network. And of course, I'm with your host, Gerard. And Gerard, I'm excited for another fun conversation. And this time it's with Max Stryker.
Fun is an understatement. I mean, from the time that I got to read portions of his book and you told me how your qualifying interview with him went, I was like, this guy's definitely going to be a character. I mean, he's, not many people have experienced what he's experienced. I mean, he's been locked up in federal prison. And then after I, read his prologue, I was thinking, if this is how he writes, how is he going to be to interview? How does he talk? Because his prologue is very defiant. It's well written. He's definitely not shy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right before you got a chance to speak with him, Gerard, producer Jemmy and I, we spoke with Max for a little pre-interview. And that's usually supposed to be about a good 10 to 15 minute conversation. But it actually turned into a full-blown discussion that lasted maybe 40 minutes. So he definitely had so much to say. And we were just so curious to hear more of his story. He's an open book, so we knew he would go as far as you wanted him to go, Gerard. And he really just wants to share his truth about using and selling steroids and performance enhancement drugs, especially because it really affected his life. And Max sent us a final copy of his new book. And in the prologue, I picked out a few lines that stood out to me. So, quote, "Nothing else in life hits harder than the truth, and nothing else in life hurts more than the truth. That's because the truth doesn't give an F about your feelings. It is what it is." And for the record, Max didn't say give an F. He said the actual 4-letter word. So that just goes to show where he is in the story.
Well, I bet that 40-minute interview would have been 80 minutes had he not been speaking double time. He is a fast talker and he gets very animated. He's extremely dynamic and interesting, to say the least. It was a very, very fun interview.
Absolutely. It was just fun listening to the full interview. I got to edit it down, but the full interview was just packed with so many juicy details about all the celebrities and everything that went on. So it was definitely a great, great listen. And I'm excited for everyone to hear it. So to the listener, like on episode 1, you'll definitely, again, hear a difference between Gerard's voice now.
Here again is my voice now.
And Gerard's voice in the interview, which we recorded a while back. And I'm again using the same model of microphone that Gerard used for his interview with Max. So you may already be able to tell the difference in sound quality between my mic and Gerard's brand new Shure MV7 provided by Mainline Marketing. The quality of sound from the Shure MV7 is far superior, and you'll hear how much better Gerard's sound quality has been during this introduction, and also as he closes the show, versus during the upcoming interview. And with that, let's get right into Gerard's conversation with celebrity author Max Stryker. This one is full of surprises, so buckle up.
Hello, Max. How you doing today?
Hi. How you doing, Gerard?
I'm doing excellent. I'm extremely psyched about this interview. And I'm also psyched because I know that you're in Boynton Beach, which is where my family lives. And also I grew up very close by in Boca Raton. So it's just a reminder that this is a Florida-based podcast with a lot of Florida characters, and it makes me very happy.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that because, we are right here. Scenario Publishing is based out of Boynton Beach, Florida. And so we have a lot of talented people here in Florida, and South Florida seems to be the mecca now for everything in our industry, in publishing, in entertainment, and sports. So yeah, it's an exciting time to be here.
Great. Well, the first thing I want to ask you about is, every once in a while I come across a pseudonym or a pen name that I find to be exceptional. My favorite of all time being Dirk Diggler from Boogie Nights.
That was a good one.
That's a really good one. I could name some others, but then I would probably pigeonhole myself into, I'd have my audience judge me. So
Right.
Now when I think of Max Stryker, I automatically have a vision of like a Rambo type figure in the jungles of Cambodia, saving the locals from, an evil warlord or something. I mean, where did you come up with this insanely great name?
That's funny that you say that, Gerard, because that's actually the message I wanted to convey with the pseudonym Max Stryker. And I had tossed around several different versions of the name, but to answer your question straight away, I am an honorably discharged United States Marine, and I was actually at the VA hospital having some surgery done, and I saw the name Stryker on a piece of medical equipment spelled with a Y. And I had already decided the name Max, and I thought, Max Stryker, there it is. That would be terrific. I also thought about my efficiency in fighting as far as being a former Marine Corps boxer and a free fighting champion. And I do strike. I am a striker. I don't go to the ground. I don't grapple. I'm not an MMA star or anything like that. So the pseudonym just kind of fit me to the T. So that's why I went with Max Stryker.
And why did you decide to write under a pseudonym? I know people have, various, reasons for doing that. What was your reason?
One of the problems I was having writing the book, and I did write it 3 times. This is the third version of the book. It's extremely difficult for me to write as Anthony Vincent Laterza Jr. and write about myself and to write about, my other associations in the book, be it a loved one or just a business acquaintance or even an arch enemy. In order to facilitate my journalism, I do write in a third party, and it just makes it easier for me to write about myself from an outside perspective and to write about my friends and loved ones and even my enemies.
Now, I really, really want to talk about your book, but before we do that, as an attorney myself, I can't help but ask you about the various legal accomplishments, milestones that you claim in your bio and in the book. The one that stands out to me the most is that you say it to be the most accomplished pro se litigant in the history of American jurisprudence, and you list a couple of wins here, including the most glaring is the United States Supreme Court. So, they say that anyone who represents himself in court has an idiot for a client, right?
William Shakespeare, I quote him in the book. He said, "A man who has himself as an attorney has a fool for a client." The Supreme Court win was while I was incarcerated in a place called Coleman Federal Prison. And I was working in the law library on my case. I had been illegally sentenced.
What were the underlying issues in the case, just so we have a little bit of background?
I had been arrested for cultivation of medical marijuana. And I had a grow room in the back of a warehouse. This is going back 21 years ago. So we weren't actually turned the corner on this issue yet in society. Right. And when the police raided the little grow room that I had into a federal case, they had searched the entire warehouse. It was a storage room. And they found a firearm in storage in a box. And they charged me with the firearm in furtherance of drug trafficking and manufacturing. They just created this case out of nowhere. Well, I stood my ground. I took him to trial, and I was acquitted of the firearm, but I was found guilty of the cultivation of marijuana. So it was a split verdict. I was pro se in the case. So it was actually a huge win for me to get the gun off me, as they say. But Judge Graham turned around and he gave me a 2-level enhancement on my PSI report, and he took away my safety valve. So as a first-time nonviolent offender and a honorably discharged Marine, I was stuck with the minimum mandatory 5 to 40 sentence, the obligatory sentence. And that's what I ended up receiving instead of a guideline sentence, because Judge Graham put the gun in violation of my 8th Amendment right to be put in jeopardy twice.
Wait a second, now 5 to 40 for weed cultivation. Seriously. Yes. How did this end up in SCOTUS? That's what lawyers call Supreme Court of the United States.
Yes. So I went to the 11th Circuit and I appealed, and I said, this is an illegal sentence. You cannot enhance my PSI 2 levels. Judge is now finding a fact that increased the punishment that was neither found by the jury nor pled guilty to, nor charged. And went to the Supreme Court, and they turned the case around and said, yeah, no, the judge can't find a fact that increases his punishment, especially one that was rejected by the jury 12-0. Unfortunately, Gerard, I ended up serving because it went back to the 11th Circuit. They sat on the case. 2 weeks before I had finished the full 5 years sentence, they went ahead and found the case to be moot. And I was out the door, and I never received any reprieve in that.
So let me guess, you got out the door, but you had time served, but by then the damage had been done because you had been locked up.
That's right. I ended up serving the sentence. By the time they got it corrected, it was over with.
Very, very interesting. No one knew the facts of your case better than you, and you seem to have done an astute job of learning the law behind it. And obviously, you were successful. So, well done.
Thank you.
I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Your arrest for the marijuana has really nothing to do with the book, or am I incorrect?
Nothing to do with it. No, it starts the road to redemption. The arrest for the marijuana, coming out of federal prison and wanting to restart my life. I hit the ground running. I came out of federal prison. And I got a job working at LA Fitness, and everything there is you go by what you sell. Now, living in the halfway house, it was so much nicer environment for me to be at the gym all day, meeting people and selling memberships. So within like 2-3 months, corporate noticed that I was out selling basically everybody in the country, and I became weekend general manager. From there, I had met Donna Marie, who was my love interest in the book and who we're still together today. And that's really, Gerard, what this book is about. I mean, it has so many other layers of law and steroids and celebrities, but at the end of the day, it's a love story. And Donna had met a local bodybuilding hero, a cult figure by the name of Rocco Labrace. And Rocco was working at a place called Palm Beach Life Extension. And this company specialized in anti-aging medicine. And all it is a facade to sell steroids and HGH, performance enhancement medication. So I was really interested in it. I contacted Rocco, and I went up to PBLE, working as LA Fitness with my LA Fitness uniform on. And I met with them. I did the blood work. I paid them a couple $100. And lo and behold, about 3 days later, I got a FedEx with testosterone and growth hormone in it. I paid them $1,200 for the drugs. And now I'm armed and dangerous. I got these drugs. They have a prescription by the name of Jeffrey Perlman on them. Now I've got these medications, Gerard, and I'm working at LA Fitness, and I start using them at a very low dose, and they are wonderful. They are the elixir.
Hold on. Stop right there, Max. Sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask the golden question here, which is, yes. You said that you left prison, you wanted to start a road to redemption. The golden question is, when you got these drugs, did you know that what you were doing, what you were receiving was illegal, and what you were about to start selling was illegal, and what you were putting in your body was illegal?
Yes, I knew it to a certain degree, but like everybody else, I was oblivious to it. I saw, like all the celebrities and everybody else, I saw this as a way to do it and to do it within the parameters of the law. Even though I knew it was a controlled substance, you're right, I did know that at the time. Most people don't know that, or they pretend they don't. I did. But I was told that, listen, as long as you get a blood draw, you're going to be within the standards of the law, and that's not so. But to answer your question, I wasn't actually on the road to redemption at that time, Gerard. I mean, it became that, but at that time, I wanted to make money.
Hello, this is George with Flintstone Media and the Florida Podcast Network here to thank our Florida's Fresh Mix launch partner, Mainline Marketing. Great equipment can make the difference between an ordinary podcasting experience and one that is immersive and inspiring. The sound quality produced with a Shure MV7 podcasting microphone is simply far superior to other options on the market. The voice isolation technology will help you sound great even when you're not in an expensive studio. Gerard records his podcast sitting at the glass-top dining table in his apartment, and you would have never known. But not only is the sound quality simply unreal, the Shure MV7 podcasting mic is very easy to use with 2 output options. So whether your show format and setup call for you to plug your microphone into the USB port right on your computer, or to use it with an XLR cable into your mixer, you'll find the setup is easy. The Shure MV7 sound quality is top-notch, and it's easy to use, versatile, and also looks really great for your social media shots. So thank you again to Mainline Marketing for providing this wonderful opportunity for Gerard to level up his podcasting with the Shure MV7. Having won over 40 various achievement awards, Mainline Marketing has been the go-to audiovisual manufacturer's industry representative since 1987. They can be trusted to bring you the best. Visit mainlinemarketing.com today to partner with them. And be sure, once again, to check out the MV7 podcasting microphone from Shure by going to Shure.com. That's SHURE.com. Shure, turning a passion for making great microphones into an obsession.
The people around you that were also selling it? Was it more like hush-hush because you're doing something nefarious? Or was it basically laissez-faire? And the reason it kind of seemed easier to do is because no one really made a big deal about it.
No, actually, it's contrary. We were not laissez-faire or under the table. We were wide open with it. Once I switched gears and joined Palm Beach Life Extension, and even actually when I first came there as a customer, this was an accepted way of selling steroids and HGH, performance enhancement drugs, by using what's known as the invisible doctor scenario, where you go in and you fill out these little papers online and you answer medical questions and you have a blood drawer and you send the blood work in. And at the end of the day, Palm Beach Life Extension is no more than a guy like me sitting there in an office looking at this blood work and his questionnaire and telling this person, this customer on the other end, which I was at one time, that you need these medications and I can have a doctor prescribe them for you and I'll have the FedEx with the prescription sent to you. We all used it. We all liked it because at the end of the day, everybody wanted the drugs and everybody wanted a prescription for the air of legitimacy that it offered until the entire thing collapsed and everybody was showing for what they were doing.
Is there a difference between steroids and HGH, or are they the same thing?
No, they're not the same thing. They're different in molecular structure. They're different classifications of medications, and they're also different in their scheduling. Steroids, which are anabolic steroids, are Schedule D controlled substances federally and in the state of Florida. HGH is human growth hormone. It's a 191 bioidentical amino acid, and it is a drug that is not scheduled. So it is a prescription medication that can only be prescribed for 4 exact medical conditions. One would be dwarfism. The second would be AGHD, adult growth hormone deficiency. The third is cachexia, wasting from AIDS or cancer. And the fourth is for multiple surgeries because it speeds healing. But you can't use it to get buff. So that's where HGH, although it's not a scheduled substance, once you misbrand the prescription medication, it becomes a felony.
Okay, that's a great distinction to make. So I've never done steroids. I don't have any friends to my knowledge that have done steroids. You said that it made you feel great. Can you describe that? I'm trying to understand the psychological and physical, somewhat addiction that someone can get to these drugs that makes you want to do them over and over again and actually increase dosage over time.
Yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about the drugs themselves, the power of the drugs and the way they can cause damage and the way they can be advantageous. I say in the book, I say in my prologue, I advocate the use of them. Our indigenous production of testosterone after the age of about 35 starts to tank. And same with our indigenous levels of IGF-1, insulin growth factor, which is what our body produces with HGH, human growth hormone, indigenous produced from our pituitary glands. So make no mistake about it. These are drugs. They're bioidentical replicas of male testosterone, which is what a steroid is. And it can be molecularly reconfigured into nandrolone or winstrol or some other type of steroid, but that's what it's from. The other HGH is basically human growth hormone from our pituitary glands. These medications used in low dosages after our indigenous production of our hormones, our indigenous hormones drop with age, will make you feel young. It'll make you feel youthful. It'll make you look youthful to some degree. You know, it's not going to give you a whole overhaul. A guy like Stallone uses these to enhance his figure, his physique, to make money. He wants to look as Herculean as he possibly can on the screen, vanquishing his adversaries. And as a society, we want to see that. This is our sickness. We pay big bucks for those seats, and we want to see him in each sequel bigger and stronger and fighting bigger and stronger opponents.
How's that different than use the example of the MLB player? So how is that different? He's performing for an audience, and he's, and it's in a way, someone could argue that that's unfair to the other players who are, performing naturally.
That's the double standard. In the book, I talk about this double standard where Congress takes Bonds and Clemens and puts them on trial and federal trial and brings them before the Senate and basically cuts their nuts off and feeds them to them, where the actual expert, Dr. Rogel, testified in front of the House committee at the Clemens hearings and said, look, Stallone, in my opinion, is using anabolic steroids to get where he's at. He may admit that he's using HGH. At that time, Stallone was getting his steroids from me.
I worked in Thomas Life Extension. I know exactly what he was
You
taking.
know what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I have the receipt. I still have the fake prescriptions in the name of Kevin King. It's a double standard and it shouldn't be allowed. And not only is he allowed to do it and he's not punished legally or even held to the same standard in a criminal court, he's allowed to make $400 million off the movie and say, yeah, I used HGH to get buff.
Is your argument that he should be punished the same way that Clemens and these other guys were, or is your argument the opposite?
I believe they all should be treated the same, and I believe they all should be treated.
But in which direction?
In my book, I go into it. I say, look, when the athletes do it, it's sports. When the celebrities do it, it's entertainment, and we want to see it there. But no, it shouldn't be permitted. Why was Stallone not extradited back from Australia when he was arrested there with performance enhancement drugs that he exported from LAX on a Qantas Airlines? Gerard, you or I would have been brought back on extradition once we were arraigned in Australia. This guy's allowed to go on to Thailand and say, hey, I need more HGH, but I can't get in a Burmese jungle. So he buys more because we know what? The Australian authorities had his other 48 vials. He uses it, comes back to the United States. He's not searched when he re-enters the country. He's not arrested. And he stops and tells the media, yeah, I took HGH to get buff for this movie, and it'll be out in a few weeks. So see me on this big screen.
Okay, so clearly, according to you, Stallone has gotten special treatment because people have looked the other way because he's a celebrity. Why are you so focused like a laser on Stallone? Is it because you have some beef with him, or is it because you know so much about it because you directly supplied him with the drugs?
If you look in the book, I go after the Secret Service agents and everybody else. I spare no one. I just wrote the book as to the exact facts that I know. And I did it in a chronological order as I was working there and these different characters were introduced. So I don't really have that penchant for him personally, Gerard, and I don't want that to come across like I dislike him. You know,
no, I think what you're saying is fair. You did mention all these other people. I think that where the maybe misperception comes is probably just because is obviously the most famous out of everyone that you mentioned, but it is fair to say that you kind of, paint them all with the same brush.
I did. And you know what? He's also the one that comes out in the media and says he didn't do it. He's the one that sits there denying it. And yet every day on Instagram, he's released another picture of himself all roided up. If you misbrand that drug and you admit it in the media, then isn't the money laundering statute re-triggered every time you make a dime off the misbranding federal statute? I mean, that's the way I understand the law. That's the way I was charged with the law because I was charged with racketeering and money laundering in the same exact scheme.
Was your motivation behind the book to blow the whistle on all this stuff, or was there another motivation, or were there multiple motivations?
Multiple. I want the truth to come out. One of the things in the book that I want to come out is that in seizing all my assets, $3.3 million is what I lost in this case, Gerard, on the civil side. Obviously, I lost 10 years of my life on the criminal side. Mm-hmm. But it was during this fight as a pro se litigant, battling from inside of a cage after 5.5 years of isolation, pretrial isolation, never convicted of a crime, that I discovered that the state attorney had illegally executed a search warrant in Ohio and took my JP Morgan bank account. So there's so many things in the book. In a way, I am a whistleblower. And you're the first one to actually say that to me. I knew it was coming and I can appreciate it. And I would rather be a whistleblower than a rat.
Whistleblower is supposed to have a positive connotation, and the opposite side of that is snitch, right? Or rat, like you said, right?
Snitch.
So that's why. So we'll consider you a whistleblower for the purposes of this show and our relationship. How's that?
That sounds great. So I come out of Florida State Prison. I had already written this book several times. One of the manuscripts for the book was actually in the custody of the federal government. The DEA task force had all of my memoirs, all of the pictures that are in the book. They had everything that you see there, including all the fake prescriptions and everything. In writing the book, I come out, the first thing I got to do is pro se, go down and file a motion to force the sheriff's department and the DEA to return my intellectual property, which is what this book stands on. I get that back. I get to the VA hospital. I'm diagnosed with cancer. I'm set up for my surgery. Boom, the pandemic hits. Everything goes to lockdown. So
right.
My cancer surgery gets canceled. but I have already picked up the book, all my memoirs. I have all of the evidence back from the DEA.
Did you get any legal advice, regarding libel or any other similar considerations before you wrote this and published it?
I have gotten considerable, and I've done considerable research on my own. Two defenses. One is there's no privacy interest in law if you've committed a crime. Whether you know about it or not, it's irrelevant. And I cite the law on that in one of my chapters. Also, we're entitled to what's known as the truth defense. So as I put in my disclaimer, according to the United States government, the Department of Justice, who prosecuted Palm Beach Life Extension and Dr. Perlman and myself and everybody else that was involved, if you bought steroids there or HGH, you're a felon. Now, if somebody wants me to come into court and prove that, I'll help them out, Gerard.
Well, it's pretty clear from the prologue to your book that you're pretty much like, bring it on. If you want to challenge me or anything that I put in the book. Oh, and also congratulations on surviving the cancer. That's a recent blessing for you.
Yeah, it has been. That's something that I owe Donna Marie my life and my surgeons. They saved me, and I'm still recovering. It's a long haul. I'm not quite back yet. I still feel the lingering effects from it, but I'm getting stronger every day, so I feel better.
Now, let me ask you, if you had to pick the number one thing that you'd want people to get from your book.
Well, one of the things I want, the message for the book is love conquers hate. And that gets completely lost because everybody wants to talk about the power of the drugs or the power of the people that were using them and all of the money. When you see pictures of millions of dollars in cash on the floor of my kitchen that was taken out of a safe. And you see these things, they draw so much attention to it all. Mm-hmm. But my message is not so much the pitfalls of these medications or drugs or the pitfalls of using them or the money. When I went through this with the prosecutor and everybody coming after me so hard and for so many years, and I used to always say to Donna Marie, love conquers hate. Our love will conquer their hate, and we will be seen through this tough times. And I was fooling myself. That was fictitious, because the message that I want to send out, and the key thing that I learned to all this, is that love conquers hate, but I can only conquer my individual hatred with love, my hatred for the prosecutor and for the police and people that set me up and everybody else that went along with it. I realized that in order for me to be the best person I can, I have to conquer my own hatred. And that's the message. I did that. I wrote the book in complete harmony now. I feel like I've paid my debt to society if I ever owed one. I know 15 total years in prison is a long time, but I had the opportunity, Gerard, to wipe my slate clean in this lifetime. So when I shuffle off this planet, I'm not going to owe anything. What a better place the world would be if each and every one of us could conquer our own hatred we have inside of ourselves. We wouldn't have the turmoil we have in society today. And I think that's the message.
That's fantastic. And, that's one of the reasons why I'm thinking that we really need to have a follow-up interview, because there's so many. I purposefully did not speak about what you say is the underlying thread in this book, which is your love for Donna. And I would like to talk to Donna. I'd like to ask her some questions. I'd like to talk about how the fact that you're apparently a second-time self-made millionaire. But before we leave, I wanted to ask you one final question, which is, do you consider steroid use, or the types of steroids that you sold, do you consider that to be a victimless crime?
No, I do not. There's a victim in the crime on every level, even though there's nobody sitting there calling 911. The person who's using them is victimizing themselves. They're victimizing the people around them that have to deal with the side effects from those steroids. If they're done illegally like this, absolutely, the society stands as a victim as well. People's judgment becomes impaired, and things they'll do to make the money to buy the steroids, the things they'll do after they're injected with the steroids once they've enhanced themselves. So there you have it.
This has been great, Max. Like I said, I hope we get to do this again sometime fairly soon. And, whatever is the optimal time for the release of your book, et cetera. So where can people catch you and follow you on social media?
SexLiesSteroids.com.
Thank you so much, Max. It's truly been a pleasure. I know we just scratched the surface, but I feel scratched.
I know. Thank you for having me, Gerard. I look forward to coming back and doing some more recording sessions with you and your crew, and I enjoyed our time together.
So I have to tell you that, first of all, we're going to definitely have to interview Max Stryker again, because I purposely wanted to deal with his whole love story with Donna totally separately. I want to meet this woman that's inspired him. But the take that I got most from this is not so much about how he, he directly sold steroids to and members of our Secret Service and things like that, which I think is extremely fascinating. But I started to think about victimless crimes and how are we properly dealing with this? And I just find it very puzzling that he would go to prison. He says that he did it, in order to save Donna some prison time. There are several topics, whether it's prostitution or, growing weed or other things that make us think about what is the best way for us to allocate our law enforcement resources. And in a way, I think that Max made the mistake, or had the courage, depending on how you look at it, of as soon as he got out of prison for selling weed, which many people don't think is a big deal and should be legalized, then he went into doing something he knew very well was illegal, which is selling steroids. Now, he's selling steroids to willing recipients. Some would say that they're not hurting anyone other than themselves. But the fact of the matter is, it's illegal. So what do we do? Do we take all these topics individually and figure out the best public policy? And clearly there's certain situations where we want to save people from themselves. This is why we, make people wear seatbelts, and we protect minors from all kinds of things. So there's sometimes I think that most of us agree that the government should step in. But what Max apparently did was stick his foot in it twice. Once with the growing all that weed, and then again with selling the steroids. And I was thinking, who cares? Is this really the kind of person that we need to lock away? I don't know. I would love to have a debate about it. Also, he, to a degree, advocates steroid use under certain circumstances. I was taken aback by that. I think that there are some people that say, hey, it reminds me of a line from Daniel Tosh, who's one of my favorite comedians. He says, look, I totally support steroids. I want our players to run faster and hit the ball further. And I want my sports games like when I'm playing a video game. It does bring up the point. Do we just say, hey, look, anybody who wants to use performance-enhancing drugs, do it, and we'll let the market work itself out? Or do we want to say we shouldn't encourage people to do not only things that can injure their own health, but then create an unfair playing field for the person that wants to be healthy, right? So the person that wants to smoke weed is not going to necessarily affect the person next to them, because one really has nothing to do with the other, right? But if you are competing against someone else who's using the drugs and you are not, then there's going to be a certain amount of pressure. So I just think that perhaps when you look at also the entertainment, I think he was trying to either make a distinction or equate steroid use in entertainment with sports. It's still a little bit unclear to me, but I think what he was trying to say is they should be treated equally, or at least consistently. Let's just be consistent. And let's have Max Stryker come on this show whenever he wants, because I would love to bring his colorful voice to the debate anytime. We'll definitely have him back. So that is my fresh take on this very, very interesting interview. I loved it. I hope you did too. And let us know how you think. For details and show notes about today's show and our guest, go to freshmixpodcast.com. I'd really love to hear your feedback, both on today's guest and on my fresh take. The Florida Podcast Network has a closed Facebook group exclusively for super fans of their shows like Florida's Fresh Mix. Just search for FPN Insiders on Facebook to leave us comments, complain about Florida's horrible palmetto bugs, which are basically giant, supersized cockroaches, and get early special treats. So we all look forward to hanging out with you. Many thanks to our amazing launch partner, Mainline Marketing. You'll note again just how much better I sound now than I did on the interview. And that's because now I'm back on the Shure MV7 that they gifted me with. And it sounds so much better. If you are in the market for great audio equipment, be sure to check out mainlinemarketing.com or find their info in today's show notes. And be sure to visit all the great shows on the Florida Podcast Network. You can find them at floridapodcastnetwork.com. Keep catching Who's Fresh in the Florida Mix with Florida's Fresh Mix Podcast.